welcome to this webinar. Thanks so much for taking the time. This webinar today we'll be talking about supporting SMEs in Uganda, survive the COVID-19 crisis, and move past it and unlock new opportunities. And now hand it over to Linda to take us through.
Hi, and good morning. Great to have you all with us. My name is Linda Walters. Let me just decline that. I've been with SEED for just over a year, working on everything communications, advocacy, and partnership, and I'll guide you through our session here today. If we can go to the next slide, I'll briefly introduce the speakers that we have with us today. So Frank Kamaguchi is a Kampala-based founder and CEO of EcoPlastels. So they make eco-building products, saving tons of plastic, forests, and CO2 in the process. So Frank is a serial social entrepreneur. So we'll see what that's all about. And I think he'll tell us a bit about how EcoPlastel is coping in this pandemic. Then we have, based out of München, Christine Meyer. She has worked across South Africa, Malawi, and also Uganda, working on SEED's ecosystem building programs, working to create policy in the finance context conducive to entrepreneurship. But more importantly, and for the session, she's the program coordinator of UGEFA, and I think she'll tell us more about what that acronym will stand for in her piece. Then we have Eddie Riza Sembacha, founder of Finding XY, but also SEED Uganda coordinator, who's been coaching and supporting all types of impact-related enterprises for many, many years. He'll talk today about the COVID challenges, funding needs, and solutions. Incidentally, Eddie also has one of the nicest offices in Kampala, so maybe we'll get to see that briefly as well when he speaks. And then we also have Phil Walton from ICO, which is a global organization working to better the conditions of farmers and small businesses in low and middle income countries. And he will talk on financing and capacity development for MSMEs and opportunities in technologies. George, who you've already heard from, Miraj, is with Sankalp, and we'll tell a little bit more about Sankalp in a little bit. But this is our highly esteemed panel for today. So looking forward to hearing more from them. Of course, we'd love to know who's in the room with us, in the virtual room with us. I think we'll do a really quick poll, and George, I'll throw it back to you now so that we have a sense of who we have here. So please take a few seconds to indicate what kind of organization you're representing here today.
Fantastic. So the poll should appear on your screen now. So please go ahead. We'll take maybe another 25 seconds just to get the responses in.
And if you're not able to, for whatever reason, operate the poll, feel free to post in the chat who you are, where you're from, just so we have a sense.
Yeah, another 10 seconds.
Are we supposed to introduce ourselves or something?
No, that's okay. We're with quite a few people in here, so I think we won't have time. But please do feel free to put in the chat where you're from, and if you want to share contact details or want to connect with any of the other ones, please feel free to do so.
Yeah.
But please mute yourself.
Yeah. 5 seconds, and we'll close the poll.
Wonderful. I think we can close it now, George.
Yep.
Okay.
Just so you know who's in the room, I think majority are enterprises. We have quite a number of funders, investors, and donors. We have intermediaries as well, people from government, civil society, research. Yeah, so you're all welcome.
Super. Looking forward to the discussion. If we can go one slide on, just a note on the timing here and agenda. We have foreseen 1 hour with an optional 5 to 10 minutes if you want to keep chatting. That hour includes about 10 minutes of Q&A. We will ask you to mute, but please unmute if you want to speak. We will take questions throughout the discussion, so please post questions in the chat throughout, and then those will be posed to the speakers. Maybe you can be as specific and to the point in these questions, so the speakers can do a good job answering. So I'm briefly introducing the organizers of today. George, might you say a few words on Sankalp?
Yeah.
And why, and the why of this initiative?
Yes. Next slide, Margaret. Fantastic. So my name is George Murake. I work with Intellecap, which is based out of both Mumbai, India, and Nairobi, Kenya. We are the organizers of Sankalp, which is the region's foremost convening that brings together entrepreneurs, investors, DFIs, corporates, academia, and we kind of bring all these people together to build the entrepreneur ecosystem. The reason we are organizing this kind of Sankalp dialogue is we're really looking at taking Sankalp to where it's needed the most. Different regions within Africa. We're also looking at Southeast Asia, and we identified Uganda as one of the regions, one of the places that really has such a rich entrepreneur ecosystem and would benefit so much from the Sankalp convening. We will be hosting more and more of these, and we will be sending out invites for you to join some of these discussions. Yeah, happy to be here, happy to have you all on board, and looking forward to having fun in this session. Thanks.
Super. Maybe if we can go to the next slide. So briefly about SEED, we're a global partnership for action on sustainable development and the green economy. We support what we call eco-inclusive enterprises. So these are enterprises that create both social and green or environmental impact while creating economic opportunity. And the inclusive aspect is really that these enterprises often work with women, people at the bottom of the pyramid, or other marginalized groups, either directly within their business or within their supply chain. If we go to the next slide, so our seed hubs allow us to kind of build partnerships and strengthen presence and local ownership for our programs. So we've been in Uganda since 2014, running a host of programs from direct enterprise support, sort of helping enterprises start and grow, scale and replicate, to creating the conditions within which they can thrive. So looking more at building a conducive policy finance ecosystem around them. And we've been collaborating with Finding XY, our local partner, throughout these years, delivering a number of these programs, from our awards to our enterprise programs. And I think that's actually a good bridge to give the word now to Eddie Riza from Finding XY, to talking about the general enterprises faced now by SEED and other enterprises in the pandemic. Eddie, the floor is yours.
Right. Thanks, Linda, and great to share this moment with everyone that is online. Like Linda introduced me, Idrissa Sembacha, I'm the founder and managing director of Finding XY, where we provide business development services, investment, and project consulting. And SEED is our partner with whom we work to implement different capacity development programs and financial services to green enterprises. So if you could take me to the slide. Thank you. Well, we want to focus on the challenges faced by SEED supported enterprises and the need to pivot. SEED carried out a number of interactions with different enterprises and ecosystem developers. And some of our findings, though there has been a lot of discussion and back and forth about how COVID-19 has affected enterprises, but for the purpose of this session, just want to share that before COVID-19, enterprises already had challenges that we were trying to address through the different program designs that we're implementing. And most of these included inconsistent business models in how they operate, financial planning challenges, access to finance, leadership skills. So COVID-19 only catalyzed the challenges already existing, and most of these coming in form of failure to operate anymore. Programs were stopped. Expenses increased because you had continuing fixed costs still accumulating. There are no sales for some periods of time. So COVID-19 only exaggerated some of these challenges, but these enterprises already had some of these challenges in existence that we're trying to resolve. A lot of entrepreneurs in the process shared with us how they were trying to cope during this time. Most of them try to pivot their business models, their technology, their marketing activities. There are so many changes that their products, so many changes that were being made by the businesses trying to stay relevant. There is more talk about how to do businesses online, how to adopt digital strategies and diversify income sources, get involved in more fundraising activities or access to finance. So these are some of the experiences we got from the enterprises and how they were trying to respond to the challenges that they were facing. Important for us now is, if the enterprises have made these changes, how can we solidify the changes that have been made, so that if any other similar scenario occurs, that businesses will be more resilient in how they responding to the challenges, whether economic or social, that they are facing. And some of these approaches still that we learned from the enterprises and how they want to solidify this is by trying to operate lean, develop a lean approach to how they're operating. And in there is also the thinking that enterprises, especially with how they work with their different employees, it will be important to go away from a job description kind of approach, or working to a more deliverable kind of setting with your staff, so that you are more efficient, so that they are more agile in how they are responding to market conditions and staying relevant. And then it was also important to keep innovating different ways of how you can operate as a business in your product lines, in the market lines, in the business model itself. Keep reinventing your products, your services, so that they are more relevant to what consumers want. So, and enterprises won't be able to achieve these changes on their own. Um, the role of BDSs and ESOs is really very important in helping them make these changes. The role of policies, and especially in our African environment, expressing or passing on the information required by these SMEs on what incentives and what kind of policies are in play that can really support them to grow and take advantage of the opportunities that are existing. And of course, the emphasis of more green growth and import substitution, especially for SMEs that are usually so much affected by the high importing that is practiced by most African countries. So these are some of the learnings that we picked up in our interactions with SMEs during the pandemic.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eddie. So if you have any questions, then feel free to send them to us. But I think Eddie will speak a bit later in the session, so maybe we'll ask you pressing questions then. I'll just hand it over to Frank now to talk a little bit about how the crisis affected you and how you've changed things around. Frank, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, moderator, and the speakers today, plus the participants in today's session. Like the moderator said, I'm called Frank Kamgisha, and I'm founder and CEO EcoPlastyle. I am a House Fund Fellow 2020 and a winner the Earth Challenge 2020. EcoPlastyle is a social enterprise that recycles plastic waste in Uganda to manufacture plastic timbers and other building hardware. We basically work with the marginalized youth and women in slums to collect plastics, and then we turn these plastics to make plastic timbers, like I said. But also in our model, we have what we call the Waste Insure, which is a micro waste medical insurance scheme that allows slum dwellers to exchange plastics with health insurance cover. So probably if you could take me to the slide, moderator, so that I speak about our business model and how we swiftly change to respond to COVID-19. Like I said, EcoPlastyle, before COVID-19, we've previously been engaged into upcycling of plastics into plastic timbers and other building hardware. Of course, working with the most marginalized youth and women who live in slums, especially in Kampala. And like I said, we also have a Waste Insure, which is a micro waste medical insurance and education insurance scheme that allows slum dwellers to exchange their plastic waste for medical and insurance cover. But due to COVID-19, this actually brought a new landscape in most of the startups to where EcoPlastyle also falls. We experienced circumstances where we had to lay off most of the workers and of course close doors because the conditions in our country were not actually favorable for us to keep continuing work as we were supposed to actually respond and comply to the government regulations by making sure that we keep at home and not going to work. Yeah, but of course, like any other business, we had to think and sit down and as a team and started thinking of what we could actually do to keep engaging our people, especially these women and youth who previously actually had what to do with EcoPlastyle. So we decided to pivot, to pivot and actually change our business model to bringing to new products and services on the market. And this is how the idea of making reusable face masks came into existence. But of course, like at that particular time, resources were also not enough at that particular time because like where we are supposed to be, where we do recycling from and where the lockdown found us was actually a little bit far distant. So we utilized the resources available by making useful partnerships with the available other players in the market. And in this case, EcoPlastyle had to partner with Jora Shoes, which is a shoe manufacturing company in Kampala. And we swiftly pivoted manufacturing of biodegradable and reusable face masks. And as of today, we've been able to work with over 25 actually people, especially youth and women who have been engaged into the production of these face masks at our production facility. But of course, this COVID-19 has also taught us a lot in terms of technology because almost every activity that we've done, we've actually made our orders of purchasing materials, raw materials actually through online. We've done our marketing through online. We've done our delivery using SafeBoard and other delivery logistics that are here in Kampala. So COVID-19 really taught us a lot to in terms of technology, on how we can adapt to use of technology, be it in marketing, management, and delivery of our products. And of course, like the theme is, as any other business, having a flexible business model helps you remaining relevant, and of course enables you to respond to the match needs, because like we realized there was a huge need for especially reusable face masks, and as of today we are also actually piloting the production of face shields that are made out of plastic waste. So we are trying to make sure that we change our business model as much as possible to suit the current needs in the market, to remain relevant and respond to the match needs on the market. Yeah, over to you, Linda Walters.
Thank you, Frank. And thanks so much for making this concrete for us. So I've got one question here. Maybe Ariel, you can just ask the question to whoever's relevant here. I think it's Eddie and Frank.
Hi, yeah, this is Ariel, joining from Kenya. Just wondering, we've done a couple of these series through Sankalp Dialogues, and we had another conversation with a speaker in South Africa who said that business mirrors biology. And to quote Charles Darwin, he said, it's not the strongest or the most intelligent who survive, but the ones who are most adaptable to change. And Frank, you really mentioned this pivot in your business model, and I'm just wondering what you guys are seeing in Uganda. Are enterprises able to make these pivots? Are they struggling with this? Just curious to sort of see what you're seeing, if Frank is an exception to this, or if you're seeing this consistently in the market.
Thanks, Ariel. Maybe Eddie, you can give a perspective on this from a macro view, and Frank, feel free to jump in as well if you think you're an exception.
Yeah, so yeah, I think the environment is conducive for businesses that really want to pivot. A lot of them actually have. It's just that it was narrow pivoting, because everything was directed towards how to respond to COVID-19. For me, the narrative should be a bit more broader on how to build more resilient businesses. But yes, we've seen a number of businesses trying to pivot and stay relevant, maybe trying to respond more to the lockdown and how they can now operate. But we're still waiting to see how the landscape is going to change for our SMEs in terms of approach, in terms of how they manage their operations, in terms of costs. So those are things that we are yet to see. But for short-term response to the pandemic, yes, we've seen a number of businesses making those short-term changes.
Oh yeah, I could say maybe I could jump in, Walter. Yeah, so like Eddie said, of course, the environment in Uganda is really conducive for businesses that really want to pivot and new business models. But also, like I said at the beginning, we were like, oh no, this should be for 1 month or two, or we were actually thinking of 1, 2, 3 weeks to 1 month. But we've been now in lockdown for over 78 days. We're actually going to 3 months now, 3 months and above. So this has really taught us that we have just to reshape our business model to be more resilient. And moving forward, we are looking at embracing more of technology and actually keep innovating as much as possible, because we see that for the next actually successful businesses, be it in Uganda or in Africa or worldwide, are those businesses that will be able to swiftly change their business models and embrace technology and innovation. So that is what we are looking up to moving forward.
Thanks so much, Frank and Eddie. Maybe this is a good time to give the floor to Phil, who will also talk about the importance of technology and digital here. We're lucky to have Phil with us because he had some health issues on the weekend, but I'm sure he will do a great job. Phil, the floor is yours. If you're still with us. Unmute, please. If you can.
Can you hear me?
There you are. Yep.
Super. Right. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be unapologetically upbeat and positive about where we are today. I realize COVID-19 has been a traumatic experience for many people individually and country-wise as well, globally. But I deeply believe that there are opportunities that will emerge, and the strong will not only survive, they will prosper. Now, as you saw from my title, I'm the head of finance at ICCO, but I'm not here to talk about spreadsheets and tax returns. My background is 17 years of working in the high-tech sector in California, initially for a startup cloud software company, and then later in my career for one of the largest software companies in the world. And I've seen dramatic changes in the economic landscape before, and I see one coming today and in the future, and I see the trends which I believe will provide Ugandans an opportunity they've never had before. So that's my background. To explain how that connects to ICCCO, if you could forward the next slide, please, Linda. If you can, super. So historically, ICCO has been very involved with the agricultural sector. We've helped develop value chains, linking smallholder farmers to buyers, to the input providers, to off-takers, the whole market, developing different value chains in Uganda, heavily engaged in development of the coffee value chains. That's historically been ICCO's history, where we've been in operation for 55 years. We're the grandfather of the NGO sector. We've also have deep experience in providing access to finance, particularly to smallholder farmers, but also to the entrepreneurial sector. But the area which we've been increasingly involved in recent years is with the development of skills in the youth sector, and with the development of entrepreneurs and micro, small, medium-sized enterprises. In fact, those last two bullets is what I plan to discuss today. Even though 60% of sub-Sahara Africa is in smallholder farmers, today I really want to focus on the opportunity for entrepreneurs. If you could press the button for me, Linda. Thank you. So this is just a kind of an overview of the landscape. We all know that about 50% of Ugandans are below the age of 15 or 16. I've forgotten the last statistic is. But I want you to mix that statistic with realizing now that 4G telephone connectivity or network connectivity is available for nearly all of Uganda, except maybe where I was at the weekend. Uganda is fully connected now to the internet, and 19 million Ugandans are on the internet, and there are now over 7 million smartphones in Uganda. So that paints a scenario of a very young population with access to the internet, with an ever-increasing stable internet. In my opinion, this provides a generational opportunity to Uganda. I've often seen Uganda described as a ticking time bomb of youth unemployment. But I believe that there's a massive opportunity for Uganda that's going to be driven by entrepreneurs with new business ideas. Just one example, mobile money. Africa pioneered mobile money. Mobile money is not known in North America. It's now an intrinsic part of Africa and Ugandan society. So there's this sense that somehow Uganda is behind the rest of the Western world is not true. You have the opportunity, the potential, may lack some of the experience, but with the right ideas, Ugandan entrepreneurs can leverage technology to succeed. So I want to explore that today in my few minutes. Next slide, please, Linda. So what markets will emerge? Well, here's my analysis based upon my experience. Technology, I think you may have already detected, I'm a tech fan. The word digitalization gets bandied around a lot. Well, that means taking paper-based processes and making them electronic. And there, you're only limited by your imagination. Banks have been doing this for a long time. This is particularly important in the access to finance sector, whereby you have often very paper-based, high-cost processes for accessing money, saving money, etc. But as I said earlier, the playing field is now level. Uganda is not at a disadvantage anymore. Technology allows Uganda to really take on opportunities of the same energy and skill as every other nation that's connected to the internet. It's allowed us to rethink many different markets. A good example is the distribution and delivery of goods. I'll come to examples of this later, but my favorite is Safe Border. If there ever has been a business that's been crippled by COVID in the last few months, it should have been Safe Border. But now I'm using Safe Border to have all sorts of goods and products delivered to my house. I'm using it to deliver products and documents to our beneficiaries and partners. They've pivoted very quickly. In fact, they were already doing this, so I think they were ahead of the curve. And a great example of the ingenuity that technology can empower. My own background, I've also had an experience in the solar sector in Africa. Pay-as-you-go is a very innovative way to provide credit. You pay for a solar light for your home, and if you don't make your payments, it switches off. It's a great way of providing credit and reducing your risk. Well, that used to just be the case for solar home systems, but also pay-as-you-go technology is now available for irrigation pumps, as well as fridges. I noticed recently could be paid for by pay-as-you-go technology. The whole renewable energy sector is another great example of opportunities are emerging, climate smart opportunities. And there's many different technologies out there that are looking for sales agents to represent them in a certain region. So as an entrepreneurial individual can seek out one of the best technologies and seek to be a sales rep for that technology, whether it's a solar system, irrigation, water pumps, whatever new technology or biofuel. The low emission cook stoves is another one. There is a shortage of sales agents for these new technologies in the rural community. Now, I've talked about access to finance solutions. The challenge with access to finance is it's very expensive giving small loans to farmers in the rural community. So the answer is not to give those loans. The answer is to be able to give those loans cheaper. And there's some very innovative solutions in the marketplace to enable SACCOs and MFIs to turn around loans and de-risk loans and reduce the cost of loans for farmers to grow their business and any business that's in the rural community. And the last area, which I want to talk a bit more to, there's a number of society-changing platforms on the horizon that I think this audience will be interested in. Now, you see some logos on the screen. I just want to just highlight these as good examples of what I mean. HR Magic is a Kampala developed software solution by a company called QED, quaintly named Quite Easily Done. That's a payroll and HR system built here in Uganda. It's a fantastic organization for any business that's trying to do their payroll and HR on spreadsheets, which we all know is dangerous. Simbuku is another Kampala-based software organization that's developed a marvelous solution for SACCOs to provide savings and loans capabilities to the rural communities. And that is from Uganda. Safe Border, I've already talked about. Jamir is another example of an African-based technology that is perfect for the new economy. Simu Solar, that's a provider of water irrigation pumps and solar systems based in Uganda and Tanzania. But I encourage everyone not to think national. It's one of the challenges is there's so much technology out there. The internet brings the technology of the world closer to Uganda. And on the horizon is a potentially society-changing platform called Mezzanine, which will connect farmers through to the storage locations, to the buyers, to the off-takers, to the provider of seeds and fertilizers, equipment, and ultimately be the Alibaba of Africa, to completely automate the whole value chain and agricultural sector. It's coming to Africa, and there will be need for experts on this technology. And give you another example of what's possible, is another solution that we've been researching is a solution called Sky's the Limit. And this just, I hope, gives people an idea of the power of technology. I started off my love affair with Africa as a volunteer. Sky's the Limit actually registers volunteers, their skills, their willingness, their commitment, and makes them available to beneficiaries or entrepreneurs in Africa. And a good example is if you're a small business owner and you want to set up a QuickBooks system to manage your business, who do you ask? Sky's the Limit is a tool to automate that connection between mentors and entrepreneurs to provide that guidance. Next slide, please. So I think I don't need to go through these, but I really wanted to leave with some examples, some real life examples of some of the opportunities that may be there. We've seen differences, changes in market prices. Pineapples are 500 shillings each, while the price of onions have gone through the roof. I've suddenly seen people selling pineapple jam or dried mangoes. There's opportunities to utilize lower cost products. Restrictions in travel is good and bad. We as a business have had a lot of overseas NGOs look for us for help because they can't get here. They need local experts, looking for people like Finding XY to help them find experts. A project that we're working on here in Kampala is we've been told there's an enormous shortage of qualified hospitality and catering and delivery delivery services skills. So we're building a program to set up a center to develop those skills so restaurants can also deliver and provide more services to home, as well as seed restaurants in the rural community. I think I've already talked about the internet and the improved connectivity. That also means how we provide training is changing as well. No longer are we doing these workshops in the field, but we're going to be reliant on organizations like Finding X, Y, and Z to provide training capacity online using e-learning tools. The way that entrepreneurs will be supported will be changing. So that's my quick overview of how I see the market changing. I hope I haven't overrun too far, Linda. Any questions?
Thanks so much, Phil. Just super brief, maybe you can just say 2-3 points on one question that came in from Eddie Djemba on, and you touched on it, what does it take for the majority of SMEs to fully use and benefit from technology? Just maybe, half a minute, Phil.
Yeah, I see even less than that. As ICCO, we hired a different type of profile of people. There's now a segment of the society which is very tech savvy. So we started to hire a young Facebook, WhatsApp savvy staff, and with that comes new ideas. So we've really tried to rethink the way we do things. Part of that is who we've hired. That's probably the quickest answer.
Super, thanks for that ICCO perspective. Then back to you, Eddie, on key financing needs.
Thanks for that, Phil. And I think it was very, very informative on what opportunities exist. So key financing needs, financing mechanisms that only focus on trade are no longer relevant. I think programs that are looking to finance SMEs in Uganda or East Africa need to think more than just the money when you're going to make an investment. I was reading recently an article, I think it was an event in South Africa, where they were talking about how the Silicon model, the Silicon Valley model doesn't work in Africa. And this is very true, because the context and the environment in which we do business in Africa is very, very different. The landscape is very challenging. So we need solutions that have been designed from an African perspective, from people who have actually done business here and they understand the complexities of doing business in Africa. And part of that is really enterprise support. We have very good businesses, we have very good innovations, but most of them are not able to reach the market or reach the growth that they actually need, or achieve the success that they need, because they just lack certain capacities that are quite essential in defining how a good business operates. So financing institutions need to consider that and see how different models, whether you're a private equity investor or you're providing blended financing or you're providing grants, to really make technical assistance to these, and not just technical assistance for saying it, but actual capacity development. Recently, I was speaking to Phil, and we're exchanging on how it's really important for organizations to realize where their strengths are and work with partners that can enable you achieve areas of SME growth that you can't achieve on your own. So if your area is financing and you have a very good background, you work with a number of businesses, it would be nice to partner with an ESO or some capacity development organization that is really going to work hand in hand with you to help make sure that you build your cases for businesses and also transition them towards investment readiness. And of course, let's not forget an environment for people in government that can really enable some of these financing innovations to come through, because there's more that can be done. I like the example of mobile money, and I went and attended the event in Kenya, in Nairobi, when Safaricom was launching mobile money. I was still working with MTN back then, and it was amazing to see how the central banks were grappling on how to, and how so many questions were posed, and how everyone came out to pose the risks that were being presented by such a solution. But somehow this solution came through, and it has managed to totally redefine the aspect of money and how money can be transferred, lowering the cost. So these are the kind of solutions that we need. These are things that enterprises need to see how they can reduce their costs of operation, to see how they can get the working capital coming in there, to see how we can increase on the amount of capital available to businesses in Africa, to see how we can level the playing field in terms of helping African founders access financing, and not shying away from the challenges that they have, but rather building a capacity development approach in there in how you want to finance them and make sure that you can prepare them for investment.
Thanks, Eddie. Just on the topic of needs, I think, George, you have a very quick poll that you wanted to run by the audience.
Yes, it should be displaying on the screen now. We'll give it 45 seconds. If you could just tell us what operational and strategic implications COVID-19 has on your enterprise. What have you had to do or rethink around COVID-19? We'll give it maybe another 45 seconds for people to respond. Yeah, we have some good responses coming in. Oh. Another 20 seconds before we close the poll. Another 10 seconds. Margaret, maybe you can go to the next slide as I prepare to close the poll. 3 seconds, 2, 1. Okay, poll is closed. Results should be displaying on your screen now. So it's interesting and it's encouraging to see, and this speaks to what you just mentioned and what Phil mentioned earlier as well. Digitizing services has been something a lot of the people who responded to the webinar have, thought of and been able to implement as well. Rethinking logistics and other processes. That's an interesting response, especially considering, what Phil mentioned about safe border and how he's, had to. I think there's been a rethink of people going to the market as opposed to maybe purchasing things online and having those things sent to them. Unfortunately, we also have some responses, and people are saying they've had to downsize on some stuff or cut down on numbers of their stuff. Yeah, over to you, Linda.
And obviously all of these things have financial implications as well. And this is where I want to bring in Frank. Maybe just for a few brief minutes, if you can, Frank, to give your kind of enterprise perspective on the finance piece. I think we can go to the next slides for that.
Exactly. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. But meanwhile, I really want to thank Eddie, because he really mentioned actually point of enterprise support is something that is really very important, and I think I'll talk about it during my presentation. So I'm going to talk about financing on the enterprise perspective. Us as an enterprise, EcoPlaster, how have we responded to to the challenges that we face in financing and the opportunities we've had actually to pivot our business from recycling plastics now to making reusable face masks and face shields from plastic waste. In Uganda, generally, there's actually a huge problem when it comes to access to financing, because you realize that actually the most available alternative, actually the most available financing means in Uganda is debt. That is what actually most of the startups in Uganda go for. So they really, it is the most available financing alternative on the market. But this debt offered by different banks, you find that they require collateral security, which has been actually a challenge, like to us, Ecoplastine. I remember there's one bank that we contacted, and when we looked at actually the collateral security that the bank needed, it was on average 161.8% of the loan amount. And ideally, this is a huge amount of money that us as a startup we couldn't really afford at that particular time. But also there's high risk perception by the lending institutions. So these lending institutions, in most cases, to the Ugandan perspective, they look at most of the startups in Uganda to be of high risk. And in our case, because we are actually like pioneering this technology in our country to manufacture plastic timbers, so there is no kind of data about how this kind of startups have been operating. So like these banks really regard us to be high risk for them to invest in us. And of course, the other challenge to access to financing has been a lack of market access due to poor quality and non-standard products. You realize that most of the startups, and of course this actually comes to enterprise support, like Eddie said, because as businesses grow, there's really a need to provide such kind of strategic advice, be it technical or non-technical, to ensure that they produce quality products. Because when products are quality, when you have actually quality product and you have a standard product, then the market responds positively to that product. So most of the startups in Uganda, because they do not have the technical expertise, they end up producing non-standard products, which actually limits their access to the market. And this becomes a hindrance to access to financing. But of course, also there is undercapitalization and inadequate technical expertise. And of course, even the management skills, you realize that most of the businesses, like for the case of our enterprise, like you find maybe the marketing department has no person who is an expertise in marketing, and so that actually creates a very big hole, a loophole in the marketing field. So this also becomes a huge challenge to businesses in accessing to financing. We look at them as we actually undervalue them, but they really contribute so much to these businesses coming up with all the requirements that these banks actually ask for before you access finance. What have been some of the financing opportunities for Ecoplastine? Of course, now, like moving forward, we are looking at sales growth as one of the sustainable financing source for Ecoplastine. And I think this is true for all other businesses, because we understand actually that the only sustainable financing source for all businesses is through growing sales. So this is what we are looking up to. But before we go to sales, we are looking at lease financing, which and in this case we have contacted one bank called Grofens. So it provides machinery and equipment on a lease term basis. So they procure for you the machinery and keep ownership of the machinery until you pay the loan and finish the loan. And prepare ourselves for much bigger investment to scale and make a big impact. Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you so much, Frank. And I think I see quite a few questions in the chat and comments, sort of reiterating this point that you're both making in terms of the challenges around finance. So in the interest of time, I'm going to turn over to Christine, who's going to talk a little bit about this as well, and perhaps also make some concrete suggestions as to access to finance here. Christine.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, my name is Christine. I'm a program coordinator for UGEFA. That's short for the Uganda Green Enterprise Finance Accelerator. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce a program that helps to tackle some of the barriers and the challenges that, that came up in the last hour. If you move to the next slide, please. I think I will keep that in the interest of time quite short because most of it already came up in the last couple of minutes. So the program was designed based on like what we experienced is the importance of SMEs in the Ugandan economy. So we feel that, or SMEs are important because they contribute about 90% of private sector production. They provide employment and income opportunities to millions of people. However, they are facing a lot of challenges. Among them is access to business development support and access to finance. And the UGEFA, the Uganda Green Enterprise Accelerator, is aiming at improving the access to finance for SMEs. What we see are common challenges is something that came up already with the previous speakers, and I think also partly here was emphasized in the chat, is that for SMEs, they are lacking experience to develop solid business plans, to set up well-founded risk management systems, to develop resilient business models. It's even more challenging to develop solid and accurate financial systems, and while bank loans are a quite interesting means of finance for SMEs because they can actually keep control of their business, it is challenging for SMEs to access commercial loans, to access bank loans because of high interest rates, what Frank also mentioned, high collateral needs. This is even more challenging now with the situation that COVID-19 had created, where SMEs are considered even more risky by banks. The enterprises have to rethink their business model. Have to increase their efficiency, have to increase their resilience, also have to think about how they can expand or diversify markets, how they can implement digital strategies to stay operational, to sell their products, and of course also even more SMEs at the moment need finance to survive. So the competition for finance is even more fierce, which means that enterprises which are looking to access finance need to have their financial sheets ready. Move to the next slide, please. Oops, the one, sorry. Go to the next one. And here is where the Uganda Green Enterprise Finance Accelerator comes in. So the objective of the Green Finance Accelerator is to improve access to finance for green enterprises through facilitating tailored loans and direct acceleration support. This is a project which has been started, has been launched in the beginning of this year, focusing on the sectors of green manufacturing, clean energy, sustainable tourism, and sustainable transport and mobility, and clean energy. The project is implemented by Adelphi in collaboration with SEED and Finding XY, and is funded by the European Union. It's a 4-year project, and it works with both with enterprises and with commercial banks in Uganda. Our offer to green enterprises is an increased access to loans, plus some capacity building to both prepare enterprises to access loans, but then also to absorb the finance. So what we offer to SMEs is a comprehensive package of capacity building on key topics for financial readiness and growth that is delivered by experienced business development advisors, and based on easy to use and practical tools in both group settings, but also individual one-on-one support. So what we offer to enterprises is capacity building for financial readiness and growth to prepare loan applications. We will then match them with our partner banks for a facilitated access to loans, and then don't leave the enterprises alone, but also provide capacity building building to absorb finance and growth to implement their investment plans. We also offer support for impact assessment to assess the green impacts that these enterprises will have, the contributions to both the SDGs, but also to mitigate and adapt to climate change. If you go to the next slide, please. We also work together with, like I said, with commercial banks in Uganda. Our objective is to develop tailored funding facilitation mechanisms, loan mechanisms that facilitates the provision of loans to SMEs. We work with commercial banks, and these will be provided also with technical assistance in lending to specifically green enterprises, green SMEs. They will receive will receive trainings free of cost to build the case for green SME finance and to leverage opportunities that arise from lending to green SMEs, also in connection with green and climate finance. The project will also, through our annual Green Finance Dialogue Fora, bring together the ecosystem, the network of BDS providers, financing institutions, enterprises, governments, and sector experts for networking and exchange. We are launching our call for applications, our first call for applications quite soon. So everyone who is interested can visit our website at www.ugefa.eu to pre-register for the program. And we are also at the moment setting up partnerships with different stakeholders from the entrepreneurial ecosystem, ranging from BDS providers to banks and other financial institutions. So I'd like to take the opportunity to invite everyone who is interested in partnering with us or learning more about the project to please get in touch with us, and we can happily then explore how we can collaborate. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christine, and everyone, yeah, please feel free to reach out to Christine and check this out. We will take another 7 minutes for a couple of questions here, but of course, feel free to drop off if you have other commitments. I'm also just, if anyone wants to share a reaction at this point, please jump in and unmute, and we'd love to hear your point of view so far. So I'll just open up the floor for that. Meanwhile, maybe a first question here, and whoever of the speakers feels so inclined, please jump in. Is there a reaction here? Hear someone.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please do.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Herbert. I work with Resai. We provide clean cooking energy. We have a biogas technology that we're implementing. And my major deliberation is about what Eddie talked about, that we need to think beyond financing these enterprises. For instance, Resai, if we want to be an ecosystem for different biogas technologies, there's no need for us to go back and reinvent the wheel when there is a lot of technology that can work in Uganda. But along the way, and what COVID has brought is, you look at the whole, the normal way has been disrupted. So can we talk about how to deal with logistics? How do we get to our community? And I feel this has to be addressed by more than just funding an enterprise and giving them money, but you don't know how they will flourish in the market. So maybe the question to Christine about UGEFA, would you look at just beyond giving the enterprises money, will you help them along the way to adopt to the new normal? Because we need to now to redesign everything from the delivery models, and how do we interact with customers? How do we implement? Someone talked about the sales agents not being able to move. So like everything is kind of affected. The mobility and the people that we're working with, our enterprises work with people at the grassroots. So you find that their incomes have been affected. Like for instance, biogas, we're looking at dairy farmers, but they're not the entire
challenges in rethinking logistics. So feel free, Christine or Frank or Eddie, perhaps to jump in on that point.
Eddie, do you want to go
Yep.
first?
Christina, I will let you speak for UGEFA, but I agree with you, Herbert. I think we need to think beyond just financing, like I said, to see how we can enable transactions for the businesses that we are supporting and how to really improve the environment from an African perspective and the challenges that the businesses face. So when you these financing solutions really have to cater to those. Back to you, Christine.
Yeah, I agree. That's a quite important topic, and that's why we have designed a quite comprehensive support package providing capacity building to create a resilient business model, to look at customer segments, to look at strategies to commercialize products, and to develop also financial systems that are interested to banks. So I agree, it's a quite important topic that has to be tackled in order to improve the access to finance for SMEs.
Thanks so much, Christine. I had another question that I'm just going to throw out here. How might SMEs build more resilience into their models to withstand future pandemics and extreme weather events? Any thoughts, very practically or holistically, how that might be built into these models? Maybe Phil or Eddie can jump in on this.
Phil, are you taking that?
I didn't quite catch the question, sorry.
How might SMEs build more resilience into their model to withstand extreme weather events and future pandemics?
Well, I think there's inherent risks with certain businesses which interface with the public. So you've seen that with restaurants and shops and salons, for example. I do think adopting some of the cloud-based kind of delivery services like Jumia and Save Bodder to automate delivery de-risks certain aspects of a business. I think there isn't really an insurance option. That's true for not just COVID, it's true for other natural disasters like locusts and droughts. I don't think there's really good insurance solutions for things like this. I think it's strength of business model and a way of delivering to the public without necessarily having the public come to you would be my first thoughts.
Yeah. And just to add on that, what I shared earlier, I think businesses need to emphasize constant innovation. I mean, it's easy for your service or your business model to become obsolete. The example that was given of Safe Border, how they had already started working on not just transporting passengers, but working on also delivering other kinds of items. So businesses need to as a business, if you're going to be resilient, you need to emphasize innovation. How can you better provide services and still stay relevant? Of course, in doing this, you have to watch out for the cost of doing a new innovation because innovations come with challenges, but rather innovate progressively, come up with an innovation design of how you're going to bring new products or new value additions to what you're already offering, but in an effective way, maybe through carrying out smaller experiments that are not so costly for you and allow you to already understand how the market will respond to your new innovation and make sure that the innovation is also more complementary to what you already had, as compared to totally adopting a new business model altogether, because that's a different thing. But make sure that the new innovations that you're adding to what you're creating are complementary to what you're offering before.
That's a good point, Eddie. I think it's keeping close to what you're good at, but also I think there's a skill that entrepreneurs have of being able to predict trends in the future. I think I mentioned the increasing number of smartphones that are now in Uganda, and that percentage is increasing dramatically, as is the cost of phones reducing dramatically. I've noticed a number of businesses in the last few months where somebody has established a small station for repairing this, applying screen protectors to smartphones. And I was talking to one of these these vendors recently, and they're doing a very nice business by applying professionally screensavers to smartphones. Now, that business wasn't there a year ago. If you anticipate those opportunities, I talked about the prices of foods. I was buying sun-dried mango, which was delicious. And I think, as we all know this time of year, there's so many mangoes lying on the floor, you trip over them. It's how to take advantage of what's around you. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It can be small ideas, but there's just two ideas of as an example.
Thanks so much, Phil and Eddie. I'm gonna round off here. I'm sorry for all of you that did post questions that we didn't get to, but we will share all the contacts in the presentation after, so you will be able to perhaps connect on that bilaterally. George, I'll hand over to you now to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Linda. Margaret, if you can maybe move to the next slide, the last slide. So we have put up, sorry, Eddie, I didn't ask you before I put up your email ID, but I hope you'll be fine with that. Okay. Really looking forward to, hosting more convenings like these ones. So please, take my email, take Eddie's email, send us an email. We will be sending out slides and the webinar recording after, and a short survey just to ask you what topics you think might be important to discuss in the future. I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone's question, but that really just shows that there's a need to have these kinds of discussions and these kinds of convenings, even when the world is going through this kind of changes. So please, get in touch. Let us know what you'd like to hear, what you'd like to have discussed as topics, and we'll do our best to reconvene again and focus on those. Thank you so much to the speakers for attending this and taking their time. And thank you so much to you, the audience, for joining us for this 1 hour 15 minutes. Sorry we went a bit over time, but I think the discussion was just so interesting that. And thank you all for staying back and for the extra time. Yeah, Linda, maybe you can close up.
Yeah. No, I think you said it all, George. So I will let everyone go on with their day. Please feel free out to Eddie, George, but also directly to the speakers and everyone else here. I hope this is a start of the building of a bigger network here in Uganda. Thanks so much from my end, and we'll close off now.